nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mel. And with that, at the League of Women Voters, we decided to do this to bring the neighborhood together, to bring the city of Miami together as one community, because you all have a lot of questions for these kind people that have decided to run for office. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization. Thank you. We do not endorse candidates or parties, and we're just here to provide information. This is not a debate. This is a forum. The purpose of this is for you all, and all of the questions that will be asked are from the neighborhood associations and the people that registered. But with that, Josh will have some house cleaning for us. Please, Josh.
Thank you, Marisol. Good evening, everyone. My name is Joshua Kaufman. I am very happy to represent the ACLU of Florida tonight. We also are a nonpartisan organization. Yeah. Working to fight for every one of our civil rights and liberties, and of course, a really big civil right is the First Amendment, and specifically freedom of speech, right? Hearing from people that you may agree or disagree with is the foundation of our country. And tonight we're going to hear from two candidates who have a whole lot to share about how they are going to impact this city. And so with that in mind, I'd like to introduce a few house rules. We have a great crowd here tonight. I can feel the energy. If possible, if you can refrain from applauding, making any interruptions, from any other noises during the debate, please give them as much time as possible to share their vision for our city. I would really appreciate it. We do have our wonderful individuals, volunteers in this front row who are going to be keeping track of the time for each of the questions, making sure we're going at a steady pace. And lastly, as Marisol mentioned, all of these questions are sourced from the neighborhoods themselves and vetted by all of the organizations involved here to ensure they are fair to both candidates, as well as representing the major issues impacting our city. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you so much, Josh. And with that, we have to also mention that we are partnering with WPLG Channel 10. We have Nicole Perez here. Nicole is the primary co-anchor at WPLG Channel 10, Local 10, at 4, 5, 6, 9, and 11 p.m. newscast. She spearheads the weekly Mom-to-Mom segment through which she spotlights mothers making meaningful change in their lives and communities. In July 2016, Nicole joined the Local News 10 team as the morning traffic reporter. Prior to being at WPLG, Nicole spent more than 5 years at WSVN working in production and 4 years as a graphic designer for the Miami Heat television network. Nicole has covered local, national, and international news stories. In 2022, Nicole traveled to the United Kingdom to cover the Queen Elizabeth Platinum Jubilee. She returned to England later that year to cover the Queen's death and once more to cover the coronation of King Charles. Nicole has also reported on the 75th anniversary of D-Day, the Notre Dame Cathedral fire, Holy Week in Rome, and recovery efforts in Puerto Rico post-Hurricane Maria. She has secured exclusive reports for Local 10 and particularly enjoys hearing from South Florida's unsung heroes and telling their stories. It's much longer than that, but we'll leave it there. We have a program to run. Thank you, Nicole. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Marisol. Thank you, Marisol. That's good enough. Thank you so much. Thank you all for having me here tonight, and thank you all for being here. Thank you to our candidates and our community members. Good evening, everyone. I'm looking forward to a very wonderful debate and getting to know a little bit more about each one of our candidates. So each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement, 2 minutes to respond to each question, and 2 minutes for closing remarks. There will be 1 minute rebuttal if mentioned by name or implied. Speaking order will rotate throughout the evening. So we are going to begin by introducing the candidates, which you all know already, Eileen Higgins and Emilio Gonzalez. Just so you all know, before we walked out here, I asked them if it was okay to address them by their first name. So for the rest of the night, I will call her Eileen. I will call Emilio, Emilio. So we're going to begin with your opening statements. Eileen, we're going to begin with you.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks to the League of Women Voters for gathering us here together as each and every one of you begin to prepare for making a very important decision, which is how our city is going to be governed for the next few years. For those of you that haven't met me, my name is Eileen Higgins. I'm a mechanical engineer by training. I started my career in manufacturing and then worked my way up in the private sector. When I was in my mid-40s, I sort of began, like many of you, to get a calling to do something different, which was also about making a difference. And that's when I pivoted my career completely from the corporate sector and became the country director of the Peace Corps in Belize, and then continued my service to our nation as a diplomat in the Foreign Service. So when I settled back here in Miami, I wanted to keep making a difference. And in 2018, I was elected to serve as the county commissioner, serving about 1/3 of the city of Miami. And since that time, I have just put my engineering skills to work. I've been building affordable housing, expanding mass transit, implementing resiliency measures, and most importantly, also in most of our local neighborhoods, supporting small businesses. In case you haven't noticed, I'm a person that basically sets the alarm every day, goes to work, tries to work for you to make our community a better place. It's an honor to be here tonight to speak with you and to be here with Mr. Gonzalez as well.
All right. Thank you, Eileen. Emilio?
Good evening, all. And again, thank you for the League of Women Voters and all the other associations and groups that are responsible for this evening. Emilio Gonzalez, pretty much an Army officer, an overeducated one, but I'm just thrilled to death at the opportunity to run for mayor of Miami. I graduated from the University of South Florida in Tampa. I have a graduate degree from Tulane. I have a doctorate from the University of Miami. And I spent 26 years in the Army as an intelligence officer, where I retired with the rank of colonel. After that, I've had numerous other positions, to include being the National Director of Immigration and Citizenship in Washington, D.C. This, for me, is really a wonderful opportunity. You know, when I was making new citizens, and we would have the oath ceremony, of which we did many here in Miami Beach, I would always tell our new citizens that they need to put their past behind them. And if you're a new citizen, you should get an American passport, register to vote, and more than anything else, volunteer for jury duty, because it doesn't happen anywhere else in the world where you're judged by your peers. And lastly, they should all run for office, because this is what democracy is about, running for office, even if it's a school board seat. I've had the privilege of being the airport director. I've had the privilege of being the city manager. I'm in private business now. I'm a partner in an asset management company. And I felt the call to step up and do what's right, particularly because everybody in this room knows what's going on in our city. You know, normally people will say, or they'll ask, why are you running? And I tell them, you got to be kidding. You don't know why we're running to fix the city of Miami? The follow-on question is, are you crazy? Why would you do this to yourself? But you know what? It's got to get done. We are a much better city than what we're perceived to be. We are the city of the future. We are a city built on the hard work of people that came here before us.
Emilio.
And it's time to take the reins back
That's your
and
time.
give it to our families. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to talk now about housing affordability. The first question will go to you, Emilio. Housing affordability remains one of the most pressing issues facing Miami residents. As rent and home prices continue to rise, too many families are struggling to stay in the communities they've helped build. The next mayor will need to balance growth with equity and ensure that development benefits all residents, not just a few, and that Miami remains a city where teachers, first responders, service workers, and young families can afford to live. Miami consistently ranks among one of the most unaffordable cities in the country. Many residents are afraid they will be priced out of the city or have already left. What specific policies would you champion as mayor to make sure this doesn't happen?
Thank you. You're absolutely right. Miami is too expensive. Our young people graduate from college and they have to move because they don't have the jobs that will pay them enough money to pay their rent, let alone a mortgage. What I wanted to do is I want to create a city where we're not a city of renters, we're a city of owners. And we need smart growth. I have no problems with high-rise development. I think it's wonderful as long as they pay the taxes. And we use that tax base to operate and work in our city. Our young people need an opportunity to stay here. They can't stay here, which is one of the reasons that I'm so into the idea of doing away with ad valorem property taxes, because you can put more money in people's pockets, young families that are struggling to buy a new home. Imagine if you don't have to pay taxes. We have a crisis with our children. Child care is super expensive. Elder care is super expensive. Everything is super expensive. And there's not one silver bullet, Nicole. It's not like you can say, I'm going to do X and fix a problem. I think the problem is across the board, and I think we need to address it in phases. We need to look at our developer community and say, fine, build whatever you want, make it responsible, make it so that people can afford to actually rent and buy the buildings that you're putting up. We need to make sure that the buildings aren't going to cause unimaginable traffic jams right now, which is what's happening. But again, we have to take a holistic approach. Miami is the largest landholder. The city of Miami is the largest landholder in Miami. But you know what? Even if we started building and building and building affordable housing there, or workforce housing, or whatever you want to call it, by the way, it's so expensive, it really isn't affordable or workforce. You're still going to have a great need in the tens of thousands of units of affordable housing. So I think we need to sit down and have a holistic approach and say, what do we tackle first? Do we tackle ad valorem taxes? Let's talk about buildings. Let's talk about traffic. Let's talk about education. All of these things come together because not each one is not in a silo.
Thank you, Emilio. Eileen?
Well, I think everybody in this room will agree that our top priority is getting the cost of housing under control. And I'll just give you some perspective on some of the things that I've done in my district over the past 8 years. First of all, when I arrived as county commissioner, one of the first things I did was survey every single piece of county-owned land and said what the heck is on it and what should be on it, and in most cases that should be housing. And since that time, I've already built or rehabbed, if there's older buildings, over 4,000 units of affordable and workforce housing. And there's 3,000 more in the pipeline. That will be a priority for me as mayor, to look at every piece of city-owned property and say, why aren't we using that for housing? Let's talk about the Mel Reese deal, right? Whether you're pro a soccer stadium or against a soccer stadium, I'm kind of happy to have one. I would never, had I been mayor, approve that deal without a single unit of housing on all those acres. Other things that have to happen. We have all kinds of naturally occurring affordable housing. One of the things that we did at the county was set up grants and low-interest loans for people to renovate historic, not necessarily designated, but historic-looking, in my opinion, homes to keep them affordable. The county has purchased already 3 such homes in Little Havana that are forever affordable. We need to accelerate permitting. The permitting system in the city of Miami is absolutely outrageous. It can take a year and a half, 2.5 years to break ground on a new affordable housing project. And by the way, it can take that long for you all to permit getting new windows in your homes to keep them prevented from storms. There are many ways to address the affordability crisis. I have done many of those at the county, and I will bring that track record with me to the city.
Eileen, on the permitting system, what is your plan to fix it?
All right, well, the permitting system is absolutely terrible. Raise your hand if you agree. Okay, there we go. So there's a couple of things. First of all, the city has a system where nothing is done in parallel. Everything is done one after the other. And if person reviewing it at step 4 finds something wrong, it goes back to the beginning. When I arrived at the county, the permitting system was just as broken. I passed legislation and all of the funding to build the computer systems necessary to accelerate permitting. I secret shopped both systems. I put one project that was available for county zoning in for permitting and one in the city. The county's project was permitted in 107 days. This is low-income housing for seniors, right? You're talking people that can only afford to pay $200 or $300 a month in rent. The same project submitted the same week to the city took over a year and a half. We're literally keeping people out of housing. We need to make sure we're deploying artificial intelligence. Communities all across Florida, places like Boston have cut their permitting time in half. We are not using that kind of technology. All sorts of things. You're in the middle of permitting, right? and they make you redo your survey again because it's 6 months old. You want to replace your front door because it's broken? You can wait weeks to get that. That should be automatically approved the same day. So we need to look at the systems. We need to make sure we're deploying the technology that's being used all across the country to make this happen. And we've also got to figure out why there are staffing gaps. And we haven't really talked about this, but you and I certainly share this opinion that there is a real problem in the city of Miami because there has been some toxicity from the dais, which has kept people from wanting to work at the city. And so also making sure that it is a work environment where people are not afraid to issue permits because a certain commissioner will fire them if they accidentally let someone fix their windows and they don't like that person.
Emilio, would you like to respond?
I think Eileen and I agree 100% on this issue. I have spoken to numerous small businessmen and women in this town throughout the period, and 100% of them tell me that their biggest issue is permitting. I know small businessmen that refuse to expand their businesses because of the permitting issue. Businessmen that would rather expand in Broward County. There are businessmen that go out of business before they can open their business because they have to wait for permits, yet they're still paying a lease on their place. I'm almost to the point where I think that if we abolished the permitting system altogether and take a step back and see what happens, it would be better than what we have right now. I use this factoid. The Empire State Building was built from first shovel of dirt to cutting the ribbon in 410 days. You can't get a certificate of occupancy in twice that amount of time. Why is it? And by the way, not only is it just permitting, but I happen to be a victim of the weaponization of permitting. Okay? When people took pictures of, overhead pictures of my house to see how many trees I had in my backyard and why there was no permit because there were 2 trees less than a photo that was taken 15 years before. So the point of the matter is we've got to be smart. Any number of cities in the United States have better permitting than us. If you're building an addition to your single-family home to take care of abuela or abuelo, and you have an architect and you have an engineer who's licensed, and it's only 1 story, do it. The city should then be the repository of the plans. They shouldn't be sending 14 different inspectors to tell you what you did wrong or why the guy that came before was wrong. We have to take drastic action. The permitting issue is drowning our local business economy, and we need to take drastic action on permitting.
Thank you. A recent list of the cities with the worst income inequality places Miami near the very top. This uneven distribution of resources is also present geographically. A resident who lives west of I-95 claims, "We always seem to get slower fixes, fewer trees, worse flooding, less attention." How will you make sure resilience and infrastructure funds aren't just for the east side and work to serve the whole city, not just the affluent parts? Eileen?
Oh, I'm first this time. Okay. Well, first of all, I intend to be a mayor for the entire city, right? And we have to give our existing mayor kudos for, during the pandemic, standing up and telling people that this city was an amazing place to move to and live in. But at the same time, all of that influx of new people from outside made our affordability crisis worse, right? It was more expensive to live there. You were living further away from jobs, and that the city has got to find a way to connect the people who live here with that economic prosperity that's coming in from the outside. So there's programs such as Miami Tech Works, right? That's where you're pairing these tech companies with paid internships, and you're very quickly, through Miami-Dade County, putting them through training programs to get them certificates or associate degrees so they're immediately placed in some of the tech companies. We need to make sure that opportunity is everywhere. That's one of the reasons at the county we opened the Miami-Dade Chamber, our black business of commerce. Their offices are now up in the redeveloped Liberty City, so we can begin to bring economic development there. And you're absolutely right about the resiliency projects, or whoever said that question, you're absolutely right. I represent Little Havana, and I can tell you the city has neglected that neighborhood. 8th Avenue floods. I had to go to FDOT to get them to finish the flood projects on Calle Ocho right there by the Sedanos between 19th and 22nd Avenue because it flooded all the time. The Miami Forever Bond, which we voted on when Tomás Regalado was mayor. We don't know where that money's been spent, how it's been spent. They haven't even started the projects they claimed that they should be doing, whether it's seawall restorations, park restorations and renovations. Parks are resilient, don't forget. They help with flooding. All of that needs a deep dive
Thank
so
you,
that
Eileen.
everyone benefits.
Emilio?
Thank you. This is indicative, I think, of why we're running. To your point, $400 million that we all voted on 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago. And I use this rhetorically when I campaign. Where is it? Where is it? I remember, I was a manager then. We used to have these huge fights on the commission because everybody had an idea on how to spend it. And nobody wanted to talk about spending it on behalf of the city. It was always, let's spend it on behalf of my own district and forget everybody else. We brought in experts from FIU to give us a study on affordable housing. By the way, the $400 million is $300 million for resilience, and it's $100 million for affordable housing. Well, on its own, you can leverage $100 million and get a lot of money out of that. But no, they laughed the FIU team out of City Hall, and the study is still somewhere collecting dust because they thought that they knew what's best. We, right now, need to find out, and listen, it's a rhetorical question, but it's a real question. I'm not a fiscal hawk, per se, but I'm a fiscal disciplinarian. When I left the city, our budget was $1.5 billion, 1.5 with a B. This year's budget is $3 billion. In 5 years, our budget has grown 100%. Where is it? Has our lives improved 100%? All I'm asking, and by the way, I'm being very honest, I'm not accusing anybody. Tell me where it is. Tell me where the $400 million bond is. By the way, during COVID, the city of Miami received about $130 million in ARPA funds from Washington. Where'd it go? I think first, as mayor, we need to find out where our money is. And once we know what kind of money we have, then we can start prioritizing what we need to do for the city. But absent that, we're just going into a black hole and hoping that there's enough money to solve all these problems.
Emilio, on that topic, before we change to climate change, if you were the city manager, you would have known that the $400 million was coming in for the Miami Forever Bond, correct? Yes. So who would have been in charge in 2018 when the money came in?
Because what happened is the money came, it was voted on, it came in, and then all of a sudden it came down to, okay, how do we spend it and who decides to spend it? And we spent weeks, if not months, trying to figure out whether we're going to put together a citizens commission on spending the bond money, and each commissioner, they get to put 2 people on that. No, we want 3. No, we want 4. No, my district is bigger than yours. And we went, I left by then, but we went through this whole period of wasting valuable time. Then it was the issue with affordable housing. Everybody had an idea. Okay, $100 million. Can we leverage that? No, let's do this. Let's take $100 million, or let's take $400 million and divide it by 5.
So $400 million is a lot of money, right?
It is.
This was in 2018. We're coming up on 2026. If back then we still can't figure out where all that money went, how can voters trust you now if money like that came in?
Because we now, what I've said I would do is day one is do an audit. I want to do a deep dive. I want to know, I think it's fair and it's not unreasonable as a taxpayer and a city resident to ask, what did you do with my tax money? That's not a hard question. By the way, when I was manager for 2 years. My second year as manager, our city budget was actually $100 million less than the first year's budget. And we didn't miss a beat with services, but you've got to be willing to do a deep dive and make hard decisions. But what we have right now is nobody can answer. Listen, I don't mind paying taxes. I really don't. But I want to see the results of my taxes. I want to see nice highways. I want to see a better transportation system. I want to see all sorts of wonderful things that we don't have right now. Right now, our city is overtaxed and underserved.
Thank you.
And that's something that I want to address.
Eileen, if a $400 million bond were to come in now in 2026, what is your plan to be open with the public so that they know where that money is going?
Well, one of the ways you can do that is when you put the item on the ballot, is you actually tell them what projects you're going to do in advance, right? That requires planning, something the city is not so great at, which we will fix. But when you just put $400 million on and you don't really know what you're going, then the arguing around that happens afterwards. But either way, and I'll give you an example on the affordable housing. $100 million went in for affordable housing, which is great, right? We need money for affordable housing. But when you divide that by 5 into 5 commission districts, and each commissioner does whatever they want with it, and by the way, some of them have still done nothing with it. It's still sitting around unspent. You can process which commissioner can't get any projects done. But in the county, when we take public money for affordable housing, right, we're able to leverage that money to 8 to 9 to 10 times. So you're talking, if it's spent in a strategic way with a plan, you could literally take $100 million and basically be doing $900 million to $1 billion in project construction, which could add probably 10,000 units of housing. And this is why the city needs to plan. You've got to get in there, you've got to get under the hood, look in the engine, figure out where the money is, why it isn't being planned for. By the way, they don't have a capital plan. We have police stations. The whole ground floor doesn't have any running water. They had to get the police vehicles out of a parking garage because it's about to collapse. No one at the city is writing a long-term plan to say, what are the capital needs? Where do we need to go? And of course, you can never fund everything in one year. We have, we're all contributors as taxpayers, but we have to have a plan. Things can't just suddenly be falling apart without people having looked at this. And there's just so many ways the city is wasting your money.
Thank you, Eileen. Do you want to respond?
If I may, I want to agree with Eileen because when this money came in, mind you, it's one thing for the money to come in. Then you have five people trying to figure out how you're going to divide the pie, who gets what. We talked about $100 million in affordable housing. Back then, we were looking at a 9X. We would have access to $900 million for affordable housing. And it went nowhere. In fact, to this day, I still don't know what they've spent it on. I don't think anybody knows. And there's supposed to be like a dashboard of projects. I don't know if it's been updated, but what we're seeing is just a total paralysis in the city. I have people call me and say, hey, listen, I know you've been gone for 5 years, but do you think you could help me with it? No, I'm sorry, I can't. We really just got to go in there. And starting over, I think, is probably very draconian, but we got to go in there and say, you know what, folks? Ya, se acabó el relajo. We're done. We're done. This is a new era, and we've got to be better than what we are because we deserve better as a city.
Thank you, Emilio. Okay, let's move on to climate change. Miami stands on the front lines of climate change. Rising seas, stronger storms, and extreme heat are no longer distant threats. They are shaping how we live, work, and plan for the future. The next mayor will play a critical role in strengthening our city's resiliency, protecting vulnerable communities, and ensuring that Miami remains livable and sustainable for generations to come. What immediate action would you take to help neighborhoods in Miami that frequently flood, impacting pedestrians and vehicles often? Eileen.
First of all, fix the permitting system, right? I mean, I hate to go back to that, but if you have a project to fix flooding in your neighborhood and it takes 3 years to permit, that's 3 more years of flooding that you encounter. So at the bedrock of all this, by the way, the project in 3 years goes up in cost by 40 to 60%, right? So instead of doing 2 flooding projects, you're doing 1 flooding project and you're keeping our neighborhoods flooding. The other thing the city doesn't do, one of the ways you get major flooding projects done, a lot of the streets that flood are actually Department of Transportation. They're owned by the state. And there is a 5-year plan. And I remember when I first got elected, they have their annual meeting for the 5-year plan. It's out in Doral. And I thought, well, surely I'm going to go out to this meeting and I'm going to be surrounded by every elected official in the entire county. You know who's the only elected official there? Me. So every year in October, I go out to Doral, I put a list of projects together. Many of them are major drainage projects, right? That's why we got a major drainage project under construction right now on Biscayne Boulevard, right by the Zaha Hadid building. That's how we got the major flooding fix on Calle Ocho, because I got in FDOT's 5-year plan. To this day, I'm the only elected official that bothers to go to that meeting. So you got to understand the system, right? You can't just go, oh, flooding. You have to say, well, how do we fix this? And FDOT has a process. It's called the 5-year plan. You got to get in, and 5 years later, they get your project done. And so all of this is about making sure projects are ready. By the way, I met a guy, he has a whole project design for Jose Marti Park. You know, we know that beautiful park in Little Havana floods all the time. It's flooded if you go there right now. The project plan is already designed by the engineers, and they couldn't even figure out how to get it underway and built and permitted. So it is a broken system that is keeping your streets flooded.
Okay. Emilio?
Flooding, and we live in the same area. It's a reality of life down here. Miami was built in a swamp. But that doesn't mean we have to accept the flooding that we have. I think that we need to mitigate it. We need to make sure that our pump station, by the way, and I agree, this is not just a city issue. This is a state issue as well, and a county issue as well. But I think we need to make sure at a minimum our pumps are working, that our pipes aren't clogged up. We need to look at our parks. Our parks become wonderful reservoirs for overflow water that can then go down into the soil. I had the opportunity years ago to visit the Netherlands. And if anybody knows water, it's the Netherlands. The Netherlands have reclaimed 20% of their land area from the North Sea. And I was talking about the fact that Miami floods. And an engineer, as a hydraulic engineer, a hydro engineer, says, oh, we looked at that Miami. I think we could just put up like a 30-foot high seawall for 50 miles out, and then put a humongous gate in front of the Miami River, which they have right in front of Rotterdam. It's just this huge gate, and you'll take care of your... I said, guys, this is never going to happen. Nobody's going to build a 30-foot seawall on Brickell Avenue, especially for 50 miles out. But there are things that we can do to mitigate it, but to just say, oh, no, look, it's going to rain. No. I think this is a joint effort. I think we can work with the county, we can work with the state, but the city also has to use the resources that we have. And by the way, I agree with permitting. Permitting is sort of like at the center of, permitting is the heart of the octopus. And to beat down that octopus, you got to go right for it. And you got to make sure that people have the tools. We can't ask people to work on their property, to safeguard their property, if we don't give them the tools and the support. And it starts with us at the municipal level, and then we branch out at the county, the state, and even the federal level if we have to.
Public trust is the foundation of good government. Yet in Miami, concerns about corruption, transparency, and accountability continue to challenge that trust. Residents expect their leaders to act with integrity, use public resources responsibly, and make decisions in the best interest of the community. Both fighting corruption and increasing accountability in City Hall have been a big topic throughout this race. Eileen, you have said that Miami needs an outsider to fix the problem, not a City Hall insider who will perpetuate the problem. Emilio, you have stated our municipal government has failed our residents. That's why we're here. We've let them down, and they don't trust us. To each of you, what makes you the best candidate to enact these needed changes? Emilio, you can begin.
First of all, I'm not really an insider. I've been gone for 5.5 years. So if anybody, I'm the outsider. But we need to instill, not just in our residents think we disrespect them. They think the government uses them. I refer to the city right now as a predator state. Okay, and we here are the prey. Why? Because all they're doing is waiting to fine you, to tell you that, you don't have enough trees, or that your house has the wrong paint, or any number of things that they can fine you. The city of Miami has 1,610 ordinances. Think about that. We have 27 amendments to the Constitution. We live with 1,610 ordinances. First of all, there has to be zero defects here. It doesn't matter whether you do something illegal. If you as a city employee do something unethical, you're gone. No discussion. You're gone. One of the things that happened, if you recall, I had to sue the city to have an election, to have our election. And after, thank you. And after after we went through appeals process, my lawyer went and told me, he says, you know what? Just like the city now has to have an election to comply with the city charter, the same city charter says that if any elected or appointed official violates the city charter or acts in an unconstitutional way, they must leave office. Think about that. They'd all be gone. We wouldn't even have a quorum. But it's there. It's there. And we need to have a mentality where nobody will get a second chance stealing money, abusing people, being corrupting their office. And by the way, you can do that. You could put, we have a Citizens Bill of Rights. I don't know how many of you know it. It's in our charter. Put one up in every office. Make sure that people understand that they're there for the taxpayer, not the other way around.
Your time is up. Eileen.
Well, one of the ways to get rid of corruption is just don't be corrupt. So I have served for just about 8 years in the county commission, and there have been no scandals in my term, and so that is how I will continue to lead as mayor. There's, from the very top in the organizations, if you look in the mayor's office and you look in the manager's office right now, there are employees that are making well over $100,000, some of them over $200,000, that have second jobs. Doing what? Right? So all this outside employment, number one, has to stop. Right? You work for the city, you work for the people, you get paid by the people. There's no outside employment. None. Right? And that's leadership, right? That can happen on day one. You also need to do a deep audit into the finances, because it's not just simply, we've been talking about the forever bond and all of the doubling of the budget without the doubling of the services, but it's even things like the half penny, right? The city gets so many, tens of millions of dollars for their trolley system, and they were so misusing it on other things that they weren't even eligible to receive the money. So if that's just one thing being audited, imagine when we look everywhere else. What I can tell you is integrity is top of mind for me. This city, when it is riddled with corruption and riddled with a commission that is allowed to basically infect the departments are weaponized against you. They're weaponized against me. Rather than treating our residents like customers, oh, of course you should be able to fix your fence. Of course we can help you get a tree planted. They're treating you like enemies of the state. This has to stop. The whole culture of City Hall must be customer service oriented.
Last Tuesday's election saw the overwhelming passage of several reform measures, such as tighter term limits for elected officials and to create a redistricting oversight body. Additional reforms have already been proposed for next year's ballot, including moving elections to even years, shrinking the size of city districts by adding commissioners, and introducing further safeguards against political gerrymandering. Where do you stand on these measures? Eileen, you can start.
For the three that passed, I voted for all three of them. I think what we saw was one commissioner who got into very deep trouble, like $63 million worth of trouble, which I don't know about you, but I think that's a lot, decided he would redistrict his house. So rather than serving the people who elected him, he'd just pick his own people. And by the way, his colleagues voted for that. They supported this. So what these amendments have done is put the control back into your hands, right? We will have a redistricting committee that is not political, that will really look at the census data, and it will keep neighborhoods together. And so I think that that's extremely important. I've said on the record many times, moving the elections to even number years are a must-do for me. I've also said that regardless of what goes on with the petition process, I am willing, when I am elected mayor, to move the next mayoral election to 2028 and give the people back a year, right? What they tried to do was ridiculous, right? They tried to take a year from you. You can't take a year. without asking for the voters' permission. If you want to add a year to term, you ask the people. They say yes or they say no. In my case, I believe it so strongly that it's important that your mayor be elected when turnout is high, when turnout is 70%, 80%, 90%. I'm willing to put my own term on the ballot for 2028. Stronger Miami? The idea of moving to more commissioners and 9 commissioners for me is a good idea. It means we would have better neighborhood representation rather than neighborhoods that are divided. The Grove is divided. Shenandoah is divided. The Upper East Side is divided. Downtown, they have gibbered downtown into 3 different districts, so it has no power whatsoever over zoning or parks. I think that needs to pass.
Thank you. Emilio.
Okay. You're going to have to remind me of all of these, but I do think, for example, I think we should reconsider redistricting, because what you just said, they redistricted to serve their own needs. They've divided up neighborhoods just because they wanted to. So I think that's something worth looking at. Early on when I announced, I too said I would be willing to give up a year of my term. And a member of the media asked me, well, don't you think you'll be going to court for that? I said, I'm in court right now. What do you, Miami lives in court, okay? We are the most litigious city in the world. We have one commissioner that I refer to as the $100 million man. It sounds like the title of a TV program. But I genuinely believe that we need to take a step back. That with the 7 or 9 commissioners, I defer on that. And I don't think that we need more commissioners. I think we need better commissioners, okay? And the idea that, and by the way, and that's not to say that I will disagree with that. I just think that our city needs like a healing period of maybe 1 or 2 terms and say, you know what, let's talk about this in 10 years. But the last thing we need is having 9 people going through and giving us what we have right now. That's something that I think that we're not ready for that. Let's go in there, let's break a few glasses, and let's make sure that we're ready for that 9 commissioner commission. And then lastly, the even number of years. I agree with that, but I'm also concerned with that, because what will happen is if an election lands in a presidential election year, we're going to have a 14-page voter sheet where Emilio Gonzalez or Eileen Higgins running for commission is going to be at the very bottom, won't be able to raise any money because people will be tapped out, and then the only people that can run are those that have existing PACs. Therefore,
Thank you, Emilio.
I will stop now.
Yes, thank you. All right, let's talk about immigration. Miami is a city built by immigrants, a community where people from around the world have come to work hard, raise families, and contribute to our shared future. Immigration policies, however, continue to have real and lasting impacts on our residents. Partnerships between local law enforcement and federal immigration agencies, such as the 287G program, raise important questions about safety, trust, and the role of local government in federal immigration enforcement. The fight over immigration policy has been expanded down to the local level with the expansion of ICE. There have been reports nationally of masked ICE agents stopping and detaining people who they perceive might be undocumented immigrants based on the color of their skin or the language they are speaking. In a city where close to 60% of the population are foreign-born residents and over 70% of the population is Hispanic or Latino, how would you restore trust in our government by the communities they are meant to serve? Emilio, I'll start with you.
Thank you. I had the high honor of being the Director of Citizenship and Immigration Service in Washington for 2 years. An immigrant serving as the immigration director. It doesn't happen anywhere else except in the United States. And I remember when I would do an event at the White House and I would look out at Lafayette Park, because we would do events there regularly. By the way, it's misnamed. The statue is not Lafayette, it's Andrew Jackson. And on each corner, there is a general. General Rochambeau, General von Steuben, General Lafayette, and General Kosciuszko. Every single one of those 4 gentlemen came here to fight for our independence, and not one was a U.S. citizen. Not one. So this is something which is very, very important to me. And I've been on record. I will always defend my community. I will always defend my immigrant community, but I will never, ever defend rapists, thugs, murderers, and child molesters just to make a point with the federal government. 287G exists. I didn't vote on it. As far as I know, there are only 3 police officers that are trained to support these type of operations. My expectation would be that anybody picked up would be treated with dignity and respect, which we all deserve. Not just because they're immigrants, we all deserve dignity and respect. But at the same time, if I have to go to bat for somebody, I know exactly where to go because I know the people that are involved. Immigration is important to the city. We are a city of immigrants. We all came from somewhere else. In fact, when we had the whole election debacle, it was very clear when I was talking to people that would tell me, hey, we came from countries where we couldn't vote, and now they're not letting us vote here. So I think that we need to walk a very, very careful line to make sure that we don't spite ourselves. There are communities out there that pick up horrible people, and then they let them loose just so as not to turn them over to the federal government.
Thank you, Emilio. Eileen.
Well, they told us they were going to go after criminals, but they're going after everybody. Because every single person in this room believes that if you're a criminal, law enforcement should be dealing with you, correct? Right? But that's not what's going on in this community. We have, from Washington and Tallahassee, a culture of trickle-down hatred, right? The way they are talking about our residents who are our neighbors, who live on the street with us, who go to church with us, who go to synagogue with us. They are speaking of people as if they are less than human. They built, for hundreds of millions of dollars, cages for them in our Everglades to lock people up. This is wrong. I mean, I grew up Catholic, right? So I don't know what, you all grew up all kinds of ways, but I can tell you what my mother taught me. But putting decent men and women who are working, who are raising children in cages is wrong. It's wrong, right? So you bet. Let the police arrest criminals. You bet. Let ICE get the criminals. But let the people that live and work and have made this community so special live here and love here and contribute here. And when I look at even things like TPS, in our community, if they get rid of all of the TPS people, the way they're saying they're doing, that is 15% of the population of our county. That's 300,000 of our neighbors that would be tossed out of here for no reason. It's wrong, it's immoral, and in my opinion, and I'm sure my mother's and my priests, it's a sin.
Thank you. Transportation affects every aspect of life in Miami. How we get to work, access schools and services, and connect with our communities. Yet congestion, unreliable transit options, and limited connectivity continue to frustrate residents and slow progress. As our city grows, so does the need for a transportation system that is efficient, equitable, and sustainable. It is estimated we spend 108 hours per year sitting in traffic. In a car-dependent city, how do you plan to alleviate the congestion on the roads? Eileen?
Well, transportation is one of the things I like working on the most. I guess it's because I'm a mechanical engineer and there are parts moving around. But truthfully, the reason I like working on public transportation has nothing to do with, is it a fancy bus or is it an amazing train or, some whirlywig flying device. It's because transportation is how you connect people to economic opportunity, right? Whether it's a job, whether it's to schools, whether it's a park. And I've been proud to serve as the transportation chair at the county during a period of time where we have gotten federal funds for 2 mass transit expansions. The first opened in South Dade about 2 weeks ago, and in the first week, the number of users of that system was double what had been in the old bus system. The other, which is more relevant for the city of Miami, is I was able to get nearly $400 million in this case, President Trump's budget, of what's coming there. And what's great about this new project is it will provide train service between downtown Miami with multiple stops in the city, including Midtown, the Design District, Little Haiti, and beyond into Aventura. That's been something that I've been working on now and making sure that projects like this, they move through administrations. Like you get one president says, I like it, and then you get a different president. You got to make sure that that person likes it too. That's why I continue to make sure I have relationships in Washington on both sides of the aisle, whether it's the Senate Appropriations team, I don't care if they're the Republicans or the Democrats. They have our money up there, and we need it to build transportation. The Baylink project, which would expand Metro Mover service between Miami and Miami Beach, it's virtually ready to go. It's been stuck up in Tallahassee, but more importantly, we have residents at City of Miami Beach that say we don't want those people over here. Well, those people are the residents of Miami. And we have had a city that has never, the mayor, not a single commissioner, has said they want to build that program. I will work on it.
Thank you. Clearly, transportation is key. And we live in a city, and we hate to admit it, where if you got to walk 2 blocks, you get in your car because it's too hot or for whatever reason. And we really haven't broken the code on getting people to use public transportation so that they don't have to take their vehicles. You know why? Because unfortunately, much of the public transportation doesn't go to where you need to be. It looks nice. I remember when I was in the county, we would have conversations about getting bus routes and so forth to the airport. And we actually had bus lines. I don't think that exists anymore, Eileen. There were bus lines or bus routes that only had like 3 passengers, 3 a day. But it was cool because somebody wanted to be able to have transportation to this area. I do think it has to be part of smart development. I do think we need better public transportation. I got to listen, I lived in Washington for many years. Everybody rides the metro. Everybody. You sit in a metro car and you're sitting next to a senator. It's the great equalizer. You could be sitting next to a senator, an ambassador, a general. Everybody's reading the Washington Post, and everybody uses it. Why? Because it gets you to where you want to go. It drops you off 100 yards from where your office is, or maybe half a mile at most. But these are the things that we need to start working on. Our people need to develop a public transportation conscience, because if not, we're just going to live in a gridlock. That's all it is. We're going to sit in our cars forever, and we need to make sure, we need public education that tells people, hey, you know what? You have this trolley. This trolley is really nice. You know, it's brand new. It'll get you from A to B. No, but I need to go to C. Okay, it'll go to C too. But these are the things that we have to do as leaders so that folks respect and have confidence that we can make things happen. Transportation is the key, by the way, and permitting. Transportation and permitting are the key to our economic growth. If not, workers can't get from point A to their home. Thank you.
So that has been the goal from a lot of politicians, to fix the Metro Rail, to fix downtown Miami, that will alleviate traffic. Working in the news, that doesn't alleviate traffic. And it has taken years and many politicians to say the same thing over and over and over again. When either one of you becomes the mayor, there needs to be immediate action for people to feel the relief. 108 hours sitting in traffic per year, that's a long time. There needs to be something immediate. Eileen, what would be the first thing you would do when it comes? This is a hot topic. Voters wrote in questions, and it was a repeated question: how to fix sitting in traffic.
Well, I can tell you one neighborhood that has absolutely no trolley service on Saturday, and that's Liberty City. So that's something I would work on immediately, is making sure the residents of Liberty City have trolley service on Saturdays. And let me tell you why. There's been a lot of growth and development out there, right? As new buildings and new townhouses, and now there's a new park have been there, there's economic prosperity that's starting to happen, and people are living out there. And so they also need to get to work. And I think this goes back to the East-West divide, right? That there's a lot more going on the east side of 95 than there is on the other side of 95. So certainly we need to bring Saturday trolley service up to Liberty City. Then there's the craziness of the trolley, like some of these circular routes, they'll go west this way and then they come back 10 blocks further south. That's not particularly helpful if you ride public transportation, right, when the north and south, right? So there's a lot of analysis of the trolley routes that need to be done. By the way, they were already done. I worked on the Better Bus Network several years ago, and the goal of the Better Bus Network was to redesign our bus system to bring high-frequency service to over 300,000 households, and that has worked. Our buses are arriving more frequently, they're on time, and we wanted to integrate the city's trolley system into this new efficient system. We redesigned it for the city. The city commissioners could not get out of their own way and vote to make these changes, so they have the same old trolley system that they designed 12 years ago. They haven't made a single change to a single route, even though our community has changed and grown in different ways.
Emilio.
I'll make mine brief. We live in 2025, and our city is organized in 1970. And I think that the way, and I agree, I think the trolley system needs to be expanded, but I don't think that, I take that back. Yes, it needs to go to places that are underserved, but I think more important, the trolleys need to be in better shape. They're really beat up, okay? And they're beat up bad. And again, it goes back to, is the trolley right now attractive for me to go from my house to downtown? And if it's dirty, nasty, if there's a guy sleeping in it, if, by the way, the timing is such where you could stand there and wait 40 minutes for a trolley, and then 3 of them come up, one right behind the other. We need to do a better job. But that goes back to what we mentioned earlier. I think that there's this paralysis of we don't want to touch anything. We want to keep things just the way they are. We don't want to upset any commissioner. We don't want to upset any particular lobbyist. We want to make sure that nothing changes, because when nothing changes, we do well. And I'm here to tell you that day one, we're changing everything. We are changing everything. We cannot be this city anymore. I think that our residents are tired. Our residents are pretty much government out. I hear it constantly. I will walk the streets. I'm a little off on tangent here, Nicole, but I'll walk the streets and I'll say, hey, let me tell you about what I think we should do with transportation. No. Tell me when you're going to put all those people in prison. And I'm like, okay, Senora, that's not me. I'm sorry. But there is this angst. There's a voter angst out there that they're really, this is a French diplomatic word, people are really pissed off. They're pissed off at their city, at their elected officials, at their inability to get anything done, and the fact that they feel that they're just sort of the targets waiting there to be taken a shot at by some particular politician because they've done or perceived to have done something wrong. But the transportation issue is key because we need to make it attractive for people to use, and we've been unable to do that.
Thank you, Emilio. Okay, this question comes from Public Land for Public Good Coalition. The city's redevelopment of the 18-acre Allapattah GSA site will shape the neighborhood for generations. What concrete steps would you take to ensure residents and business owners have genuine decision-making power in a transparent, community-driven RFP and development process with priorities on affordable housing, green space, and resources that benefit current residents and long-term sustainability on this and similar projects? Eileen, go ahead.
Well, that is one of the great things about when the city owns land and we can control the RFP process, right? Because in the private sector, the state of Florida, if it's stuff that's good for the people or the environment, we're forbidden by state law from doing any of it. But when we do our own RFPs, we do have some ability to put in what I would consider to be public goods, right? The things that make our neighborhoods better, whether that's a requirement for minimum amount of park space, whether it's a requirement, as we know, many local small businesses cannot find a place to even rent a retail space or a workspace if they don't need a retail space. So you can put in things, whether it's co-working or actual office rental space. You can also put in drainage projects. You can put in transportation. You can put in contributions for better transportation systems. There's many, many ways to do that. You can also do what some of the projects now have done for us in the county. We're putting in heat protections for days when it's very, very hot. And we're also being able to do things things like put into trust funds. So sometimes some of the money might go into an affordable housing trust fund. For example, in Little Haiti, there is a project that has a Little Haiti Revitalization Trust, which right now in the early years is beginning to help people in Little Haiti that own their own homes with some of the costly renovations, right? We all know when a home is old, sometimes it's like our knees. Sometimes they need a little nip and tuck to get back in shape, but you might need to fix the roof. And so those sorts of neighborhood-based trust funds are a really important way. And all that stuff you can put into the RFP as long as you're complying with state law. Sometimes there's things you'll want to do that they refuse to let you do. But there's ways of getting that so you actually have people bid for the kind of project you want it to be. You want it to be a new neighborhood.
Thank you, Eileen. Emilio?
You used a very important word, which is resident input. If our permitting system is broken, our RFP system is not that far behind. You just ask anybody who has tried to do business with the city or has tried to get involved in an RFP. When I was manager, I was handed, and you all probably saw it, I was handed a file for an RFP that was let on the Virginia Key Marina, remember? When I got there, this file was 5 years old. And I said, wait a minute, what's the matter with this file? Oh, well, the commission hasn't decided to vote on it yet. It was 5 years ago. Well, it keeps getting deferred. So I put it back on the agenda, and I was this manager for 2 years, and when I left, they still hadn't decided. 7 years. Who wants to do business in the city of Miami? If you can have 7 years, and you, by the way, you won the RFP. You're just waiting for the commission to approve it, okay? Even worse, the winning bidder went to court and won, and the judge issued a scathing opinion, which is well worth reading. It's about 30 pages about the city's procurement process. You're absolutely right. We need citizen input. Unfortunately, right now, what we have is a system where elected officials will say, I got this. And depending on who they're supporting, that's going to depend on who wins the day for that RFP. Permitting, RFP, I go to conferences and I ask my colleagues, do you do business in the city of Miami? And they tell me, no, we've decided corporately never to bid in the city of Miami because it's too corrupt. And then I look at them and they're embarrassed. Oh, we don't mean you're corrupt. No, I understand. But that's the reputation we have. And that's why I keep saying we've got to start over in many instances.
And we have a voter who wants to ask you about that, actually. Lee Taylor, I'm going to ask you guys some voter questions. Lee Taylor wants to know, how will you improve the procurement process to avoid even the appearance of favoring the family and friends connections? Emilio, go ahead.
I mean, right now, that's all we have is a family and friends connection. So I think that anything we do to improve it is an improvement. But one of the things that I want to do, day one, same with permitting. I want to have like a permitting task force made up of very smart people, smarter than me, just like business owners and folks that have had issues with building, and say, give us the best practices. What are the best practices? Maybe there should be maybe there's a limit on how many protests you can make. You know, you could sit there and protest an RFP to the Supreme Court if you wanted to. And yes, it's due process and so forth. But by that time they make a decision, you've died of old age. So we do need to tackle the procurement issue. Right now, it is the worst kept secret in the business community outside of Miami that you don't do business inside of Miami. So what happens then? There's no competition. So the people that do business inside Miami are the same people that always do business inside Miami because they have no outside competition. And we need to break that. And I'm not saying tweak it. I'm saying break it. Am I the smartest man in the room to break it? No. But I'll find the smartest man in the room to help me break it and make it so that, by the way, competition is good. Competition lowers prices. Competition benefits all of us. And right now what we have is a very anti-competitive environment because nobody wants to compete here because they know the game is rigged. Whether it is or not, that's the perception. And that goes back to the whole corruption, city of Miami. We can do better. We can do better. I don't want to be trite, but we can do better. procurement and permitting are things that we need to tackle immediately because that puts a marker down. Okay, that puts a marker down. If I tell my people I want the answers on permitting in 30 days, how are we going to fix in 30 days? Do it. Same thing with procurement. It can be done.
Eileen.
I've had the same experiences. I've talked to dozens of companies, some of the best companies working in Florida who refuse to bid on any city contracts for a couple reasons. The corruption, right? They think it only goes to family and friends, that nobody's looking at getting the best quality of work. The other piece of the process is the city writes these RFPs like, da-da, we're going to do this. Somebody bids on it and wins it. Then they go to negotiation, and they negotiate it down to basically being $1 million contract. So these companies are not able to do what we need them to do, whether it's flooding or public works or building a new police station. So all of that needs to be looked at. Let's talk about just procurement. If we're building a traffic circle in a neighborhood, right? Traffic calming is an issue for lots of you. The cost of building a traffic circle using the City of Miami's process is double what it would cost if you use the county's public works department to do it, right? So the procurement process takes too long, the permitting's too long, and they are not, because no good companies are willing to compete. We are paying more for these projects, not less. When you're paying double for a project, instead of getting 2 traffic circles, you get 1. The other piece is you've got to look at all of the requirements. So I've been looking at some of the FDOT projects. So you could have an exact same type of project, like a drainage project or a road project or a milling and resurfacing project. The RFP for FDOT will be about this thick. The submission for the City of Miami that the committees have to look through will be piles and piles and piles of paper. So how can it be that we need to be able to look at models, particularly for public works projects that are not particularly specific, and be able to use the state's procurement process to make that happen?
Go ahead.
Just to piggyback on that, once you go through this onerous and laborious RFP process, it has to be approved by the city commission. That could be another 2 years. If somebody doesn't like you, they don't like your firm, they spread rumors about you. Oh, listen, so-and-so, I heard he beat his wife. What? It happens. It happens. And I think that we, as part of this, this procurement reform, is we need to be serious about this stuff. Because Eileen and I both agree, we run into people in the business world. They don't want to be here. They think we're all corrupt. And that's the reputation, by the way, that we've earned. All right? We've earned that reputation, and we need to break that cycle right now.
Thank you. George Widger wants to know, how do we prevent the homeless mental health problem from growing here like it has in other cities? Eileen?
One of the things that we are extremely fortunate of, and it's because of you all, the voters, we actually have a dedicated source of funding for homeless services that other communities don't have through the Homeless Trust. A lot of that is paid through the hotel and restaurant taxes, so it's also part, folks that visit here participate. It's not just residents here. And so I think that puts us in a very, very different position than other communities. And that's why we haven't seen the growth. We've actually begun, over the years, we've seen major, major declines because the Homeless Trust has a dedicated funding source. And so they've put people on the ground. Now, we still know we have some chronically homeless folks, particularly downtown in the neighborhood that I live in and in several others. So there is a need for what I call this interim housing step, right? When we get folks into shelter, where do they go? They're not quite ready to live on their own. And so one of the things we've done and enabled at the county through the Homeless Trust is we've purchased 2 older kind of motels and retrofitted them into small efficiency apartments with wraparound services. And importantly in the City of Miami, because the City of Miami bears the burden of most of the homeless. By the way, Miami Beach every single night ships their homeless people over to us every day. Importantly, both of these facilities were built outside of the City of Miami as well, because homelessness is something that affects all of us. It should not just be the residents of the city that deals with this. I've been advocating also, as Mayor Daniela Levine Cava has, for the opening of the Judge Leifman Center. And so I am hoping that the chair of the County Commission finally puts that on an agenda, speaking of another thing that's not on an agenda, so that we can move forward with getting that open to help people.
Thank you. Emilio.
That's very personal to me. I live in the roads, and I actually had a very ill homeless person accost my grandson. As manager, I had to deal. Where's my friend from the ACLU? I took the city and your organization to court to get out of the Pottinger Agreement, which essentially had our police hands tied. We've evolved, we've grown, we have a much more professional force. But I will tell you, just an anecdote, homelessness is an issue that it's just so complex, because as you try and get, the more chronic homeless you are, the more you're seen, the more things you do that cause the neighbors to call the police, who then can't do something. You talk to homeless people, I would talk to homeless people, and you tell them, hey, I want to find you a place to live. I too am a good Catholic. And I can't imagine somebody in shreds in a street corner, barefoot, begging for money. Okay, but you know what? If I find you a place to live, you can't bring any guns, you can't bring any drugs, and you can't bring any dogs. And then all of a sudden they back off, and we cannot force them to go into housing. I asked my director of human services, in fact, I created the first Department of Human Services. I said, hey, let's do a study. How much would it cost if we rented out a motel in Coral Gables, every room for a year, double occupancy, and we're going to put homeless people there? The calls that I got, you can't imagine. Why? Because she's right. They ship their homeless here. There are no homeless in Coral Gables. There are no homeless in Miami Beach. You know why? They put them in a police car and they drive them over here. So we have become ground zero for the homeless in the entire county. And it needs to be holistic, I guess, is the word I want to see. It can't be just us.
I understand the compassionate side of dealing with the homeless, right? I get my hair done, you get your hair done, right? We all go to salons and different places. And I asked the owner of my salon, what's the number one issue, you're a small business, that you guys face? Homeless, violent homeless. What do you guys say about dealing with the homeless situation when they become violent? They told me they throw bricks at their place of work. How would you plan on dealing with a situation like that? You want to take it? Go ahead.
Listen, violence is violence. And you have to address that. And if you have to Baker Act somebody, you have to Baker Act, and you take them to the right place, and they're examined. If they need to spend a few days in a hospital. But listen, I remember there was a time, I recall, I think a lady, was dead. They found a lady dead on a sidewalk. People die on our sidewalk. That should not happen here. But we have that balance where our police department cannot just scarf you up and say, oh, look, Ms. Higgins, you look crazy. Let's go to Jackson. Although, but it's a balance that we have. But I don't think we should just allow violence because somebody is homeless, right? Or violence because somebody is mentally ill. I think it still needs to be addressed, but we still need to take them off the street. Everybody here needs protection, okay? And we want to respect that person and respect their dignity. We want to respect them and get them help, but we should not allow them to throw bricks at our houses just because they're homeless.
Eileen, how would you answer?
As I mentioned before, crime is crime. Right? And it does not matter who is committing a crime. I just want to take a minute to talk about, for those of you that don't know, Judge Leifman's project. He has undertaken the leadership to construct a new facility that is basically ready for occupancy. And the idea behind it is unique in the nation because, as Emilio was describing, when you're talking to the chronically homeless, they're very nervous about going into shelter. And so this facility would be entirely different. It would be, you'd be able to be there for quite a long time. and they would have all the wraparound services, which are things such as drug addiction, counseling, mental health counseling, even things, it's sad to say, like a podiatrist, right? So many of them walk around the streets without shoes. A barber would come in so that you begin to have respect in that. In other words, we have to find a different build, and we have built a different facility. Inexplicably, in my opinion, the county commission, the chairman of the county commission, this building is ready to open. He has not agended an item to allow that to be funded. And I think that is holding the county back. I have advocated for that on the county, and I do believe he has agreed that after the new year he will do that. And I look forward to having that open so that people can get the treatment they need in a compassionate way, in a it's two sides of one coin, right? We want to be compassionate towards a homeless person, but I don't want to walk over them when I walk. I mean, that sounds selfish. But at the end of the day, you all live on our streets and you work on your streets, and our streets and our children are out there. And we need to make sure the streets are clean and safe for folks, and we have to do that. I'm hopeful that this facility does get open next year.
Okay, our last round, the lightning round. If you can try to answer in one word or yes or no. Okay?
I like an adjective.
We can go, we'll start with Eileen, and we'll bounce back and forth. Do you believe Miami currently has enough police officers?
You can never have enough police officers.
Emilio?
Miami has more police officers now than they've ever had. It's just a matter of leadership and deployment.
Yes or no?
No.
Should the city increase, decrease, or maintain the police budget?
The police budget needs to be maintained, and it's going to go up every year.
Yes, and improved.
Would you support civilian oversight of police misconduct?
I already have, but the state overturned our ability to do that.
We're not allowed to do that.
We're not allowed
So
to
it's-
do that by the state law.
Whether we agree with it or not, it can't happen.
Do you support expanding Miami Forever Bond funds for climate projects? Emilio?
I would like to see what we're spending Miami Forever bonds now, and then we can talk about other projects.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you support a ban on single-use plastics in city facilities?
Yes, and
Yes.
I've already done it at the county.
Yes.
Brightline or Metro Rail expansion, which deserves more city focus?
Well, Metro Rail, but it's Tri-Rail is what we're working on. Yes, commuter rail. How about commuter rail is the word?
As long as it goes in the city
In
of
the
Miami,
city.
not somewhere else in the county. Yeah.
If you had to pick one, build more roads or expand transit?
Expand transit.
I would expand transit as well.
What's the first intersection or corridor you would fix?
You know one that holds great potential is near my house on Coral Way.
I would like a four-way stop right on no.
Excuse me. There's an area I think is called Five Corners. Over. I think that place begs for a traffic circle.
Okay, let me tell you. Can I just tell a story about this? The county, through my office, has funded a complete renovation of that corner by the elementary school,
Yes.
and the city has refused to start the project.
Well, that's why you need to elect me as mayor so that I can start that project.
That's why.
Nobody answered me. First intersection.
All right, I have an idea for one.
Give me a highway.
Okay.
Come on, Eileen.
Well, this isn't a highway. I never want to expand highways. I think that's dumb. But I can tell you.
No, not
up in-
expand. What would you fix?
Oh, well, see, there's an area up in Edgewater that is really crazy, right by Margaret Pace Park, that should have had a traffic circle. By the way, their previous commissioner, the commissioner 2 commissioners ago, promised they'd build a traffic circle. It's still not under construction. There's a lot of accidents there, and there's a lot of pedestrians. It's very close to a school and a church. So that's one that's high on my list.
I'm going to go back to my five corners because it does have a lot of traffic. It is very dangerous for not just for people crossing the street, for actual motors. There's always an accident there, and I think it's just begging for a traffic circle.
Should scooters be banned or better regulated?
Banned.
Listen, I don't own a scooter, and I don't want to prohibit anybody else from owning one. I would just prefer that they be better regulated until such time as we can revisit it and say, okay, maybe this isn't working. But I don't think I should start out as ban them altogether.
Do you believe
It's against state law to ban them anyway, so.
Do you believe homelessness in Miami merits being declared a state of emergency to unlock additional funding?
In comparison to, this is not a one
Yes
word
or no?
question.
Yes or no?
No.
Do you support converting vacant hotels into workforce housing?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Would you offer more incentives for tech startups?
It can't be one word.
Yes or no?
I would
Yes
offer.
or no?
No.
Would you offer more incentives?
I would condition them on hiring people locally.
Agreed. And they better be expanding and moving, and we better be in competition with someplace else to get them here, to move their headquarters here. I want headquarters here.
And I want local jobs here. Don't move your company from, San Francisco and then bring your 1,500 employees with you. I want them to hire 1,500 people here.
And the last two, the hardest question I have for you. Café cubano or colada?
Colado.
Doble expreso.
All right, the last final question. One word to describe your vision for Miami in 2030.
Unstoppable.
Resident focus.
All right, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
That concludes our debate tonight. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Please hang around for a moment. The candidates are going to come down and speak to you so you can ask them more questions. That was amazing. Thank you, Nicole, so much for doing this. Thank you, Eileen Higgins, and thank you, Emilio Gonzalez. Please go online, visit the League of Women Voters, lwvmiamidade.org. Go to vote411.org and learn about the candidates. Thank you so much and have a good evening, everybody.